different countries, different cultures, communication, language. Can
Mhm.
you describe the challenge of that? Because you're the details and the scope and dimension of what you've talked about is brilliant but daunting to me listening to you. And you're going in to deal with so many different nations. Dubai was the meeting place,
Yeah,
and
Abu Dhabi. Yeah,
Abu
yeah, Middle
Dhabi.
Eastern for sure.
Yep. And how did communication occur where people understood one another?
So the IIHF operates under the understanding that English is the international language of hockey.
Yeah.
So wherever we go, everything's done in English. And, like Harold Springfield, for example, he's Austrian, so he speaks German as his native tongue. He married a lady from China. She speaks, I'm guessing, Mandarin because there's different dialects. And so Harry's, she's learning English, he's learning Mandarin, or they did at some point. Um, we're pretty insular here in North America. Most of us only speak one language, and the French Canadians and the people that study French in school, being as we're in Western Canada, it's not quite as prevalent out here, but there's some Canadians that can speak both French and English, and I'm not even sure. Harry probably understands a few other languages as well, but it's not unusual for us, and I've embedded myself in different nations, like, in South Korea, and I've worked in, I forget, I think it's close to 30 different countries now. And most of those, their native language isn't English, but we try to operate in English as much as we can. The people as general secretaries are all pretty good in bilingualism, with English being one of their languages. Most of them speak more than two languages. I've worked with people that speak 9 or 10 languages fluently, can converse, can read, can write. Um, Boy, is it humbling. So at this level, it's easier. It's actually easier, Wally, to communicate, because the people that get these roles to oversee their nation, that's one of the requirements. Is you have to either be quite fluent in conversational English, at least, because you can always use Google Translate for documents or whatever. But by and large, most of them are really, really good. And then, of course, you've got different translation programs on your phone. And one guy in our sessions, relied on that an awful lot. And he's really working on becoming better in English. He's pretty good now. He's improving, and but it's a process. It's where it becomes more of a challenge is when you get outside of this high level organizational governance role, and you get into the more granular, on the ground, skates on the ground, boots on the ground level, where you've got coaches in these different countries that maybe are more predisposed to only speaking their native tongue. And I mean, like I say, I've embedded myself in a bunch of different countries through Europe and Asia where that's been the case. And English isn't, I'm using English and they're using, we're both using sign language, like drawing on whiteboards. Typically what I do is I create a glossary, or a list of words that are often used in that particular language, and like words like face off and offside, and kind of English words like this to describe the game often don't have a corresponding word or phrase in that other language. Like you'd be surprised, some of the locals in different languages actually use hockey terms in English, and it means the same across the board. But I try to create this glossary so that I have a phonetic guide to what what words they would use in their country to, you know, what is pass, what is skate, what is shoot, what words do I use there, and then maybe a short list of adjectives, fast, slow, timing, the different words that I can try to learn myself in that native language. And I share those glossaries. I print them out and I'll laminate them and share them with the coaches so that we try to meet in the middle somewhere, when we're down to that local level, when direct language communication becomes more of an issue. So, between that and, acting out, drawing, a lot of times a translator will be present. So, we find a way, figure it out, right? As you say, feel, we got to figure it out. We're there to solve problems.
Yeah, you very interesting. You would come up with figure it out because
Yeah.
the essence of the game is
Yeah.
letting them play and figure it out. And here you are dealing with a myriad of different levels, different countries. It's daunting to the listeners, I'm sure, to hear what you're doing. And it's amazing that hockey is one sport that's really being expanded and becoming a world sport. And
it's everywhere. It's quite amazing, Wally? Like, who would have thought? Like, I mean, I'll just, before I get ready to sign off here in about 5 minutes, the list of countries that were there, in Almaty, Kazakhstan, which is an amazing country, an amazing city that I'd never been to. And I'll tell you what, it's right on the foothills of a mountain range, and then there's the steppe, and it's just, bare, just wind blows, but you're right up on this beautiful mountain. But here's the countries that were there. So from the Middle East, we had Bahrain, Oman, United Arab Emirates, and then this last one, also, we had Kuwait and Qatar. I used to say Qatar. I think it's Qatar. Anyway, I mean, you're in a freaking desert, man. It was 50 Celsius. They set a record at 52 degrees Celsius the week before we went. And yet they're playing winter sports, and they love it. And, it's a small group, but boy, they love it. And then Nepal, Thailand, Indonesia, Chinese Taipei, which is also known as Taiwan, Philippines, Korea, Macau, Uzbekistan, Malaysia, Iran, Kyrgyzstan, and India. What a mix, right? And and then we had, I said Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. Kazakhstan was involved at the first one. They weren't at the second one. But it truly is a global game. And, it's the power of sport, like right across culture, right around the world. And the IIHF has further plans. Like they're so happy with this template that we've, worked on for them and kind of brought to life, that this is a 2-year pilot project. So we're anticipating another face-to-face meeting with the Asian and Middle Eastern countries later this fall, and then I think a fourth one will help complete that cycle the following year. But we're also we're going to do a 1-year project, kind of shrink the scope of this one down, and provide a 1-year program, in strategic planning and leadership to the European nations, also scheduled this fall, and then beginning in the spring of 2026, they'd like to extend it to. There's 5 or 6 South American countries that are pushing now, and organizing, and so to do another, I think, a 2-year project with the South American countries. And then Africa has, I think, 4 or 5 countries and they've got a few rinks over there. They're playing inline ball hockey, and they want to get involved, and they've already started organizing, and so that's another one they're looking at doing. I don't know if it's a 1 or a 2 year project with them starting sometime in 2026. So boy, the IHF is really living up to their own strategic plan and their own vision and mission and values, and trying to grow the game. So it's just, boy, just to play a small role in that is quite gratifying.
Well, it's certainly gratifying to listen to you, and I'm so happy that the IIHF has taken the lead, because sport to me is about unity, and we live in a divisive world. Country is divided, and war is sort of a cycle of existence. And I've always been one who's cherished the Olympics and the ideals of the Olympics and what they represent. And I think that's the IIHF is taking the lead with hockey as being that vehicle. And the one module of all the modules that I think is going to make it, is going to be the glue, is sort of the ethical aspect of why you're doing what you're doing, and the values and the mission and the whole purpose of it. And I don't think we can lose sight of that, because it's a competitive world, it's a business world, it's an economic world. And we lose sight of the values and the mission and the brevity of our time on Earth. So,
well, it really did strike home in a number of ways for this last trip, Wally, because the timing of the situation between Iran and Israel, and the IHF, obviously works in all environments. I've got friends in many different nations, and a lot of them, are at loggerheads, like you say. It's a divisive time, particularly these days. And as we were flying from London toward Abu Dhabi, and our plane was delayed, and we weren't sure why. You're in an airport, my phone's on airplane mode, and I basically switched off until I get to the destination, right? And I do a little reading. I try to get on the time zone, sleep a little bit, and reflect on what's to come, and how I can best help, and as we're flying, and we flew down south. We went across France and down to the west of Italy, and then we cut across Italy, and we were still west of the Greek islands, and I think the flight plan showed that we were. We started to come down across Egypt, like a little bit west of Israel, and then we swung eastward across Saudi Arabia, and we departed here on a Friday night, so we departed London around 3 in the afternoon London time, and that's the missiles started flying. I think Friday or Saturday, and so I saw YouTube videos of people in planes in that area. They could see the missiles, coming up and going over, and we weren't aware, because we'd already started traveling before all this had happened. But the missiles were up, and so I guess ignorance is bliss. I have a little nap, and we land, and then we kind of hear the stories, and it's happening all week while we're there. And we had a couple of nations that couldn't attend because of the all flight paths again had to be rerouted. There's cancellations. Obviously Iran couldn't leave Iran, so they couldn't come, and a few other ones couldn't work their way around. Even the guy from Zurich, Jean, the finance guy, like flights started to get canceled, as the week went on. He couldn't fly in. His flight got canceled, so we had to deliver it through Zoom. And we left early. We left Saturday, and our flight was delayed, and again, delayed in London again. But we were lucky to get out because right after we got out, all of a sudden Qatar shut their airspace, and then all of the Middle East just started to close off airspace, and so flights were just completely canceled, and it just threw everything into chaos. And meanwhile, the missiles are still coming, and it was a little nerve-wracking coming home. I was watching the flight plan, and I'm going, I would like to see the plane going a little farther west, but we seem to be, inching east closer to Iran as we come up and across Saudi and go across Bahrain. And, I'm improving my geography as well, Wally. Like, I'm looking at maps, trying to figure out where exactly I'm going and how am I getting there. So, like you say, sport has an amazing power to build community. I agree with you 100% on your statement that you've got to have that solid ethical framework. It underpins everything. And I'll just close off by I'm just looking at the IIHF website. The mission of the IIHF is to work with all stakeholders to make ice hockey an accessible, attractive, and competitive sport, and to generate added value for our members. The vision of the IIHF is to be the global leader in winter sports. The 4 values of the IIHF are integrity, respect, passion, and community. And if you read into the detail, they've got there, that strength in ethics. It really does underpin the structure of an organization, the decision making in those organizations. If you don't have like a strong foundation there from an ethical base, Wally, you're not going to achieve much. You're always going to struggle. And finally, the strategy of the IIHF is they've named it ICE 26, ICE 2026. And the 3 initiatives there are innovate, collaborate, and expand. So, given the geopolitical tensions in the world, as we were en route, while we were on site, and as we returned, that added to the how memorable this trip was. Like, not only was it a privilege to be doing this under perfect conditions, but to actually be there under challenging and divisive conditions, and people still working hard to get there. And it's not about politics, it's about individual human beings trying to build their communities and to strengthen their communities through sport and the transferable skills that sport can bring to life. I mean, it's not about those political stripes. It's about something greater. And I'll finish on this note because as we talked before we started recording, we had a tremendous tour of a grand mosque while we were there, and it was so ornate, so opulent, but so impressive. You could feel the spirituality, you could feel the serene calm, the craftsmanship. UAE, it's got a lot of money, and no expense was spared. But this was a symbol amidst all this other divisiveness and these challenges and these arguments, and however you want to characterize what was happening between Iran and Israel, and in other countries. It was like this mosque was this peaceful anchor, regardless of what religion you belong to, or even if you don't. I think it moved. Most of us attended this tour. We had a private behind the scenes tour, and again, combined with missiles flying and everything else, and you've got this anchor for this society there, so peaceful and calm. And Wally will tell you, it was such a memorable trip on so many levels. So it completely validates what you're saying about the importance, the one foundational thing being ethics, that is that golden thread that underpins everything. So I'll leave it at that. It's kind of a bit of an overview of what the IIHF is trying to do, and a little bit about my journey. And certainly I'd love to come on in the future and tell some more, maybe some more interesting tales of some of the stories that happened, and share with others if they're interested.
Thank you very much, Dean. You've just put your toe in the water.
And the water was warm, buddy. Trust me. We went in the Persian Gulf. It was warmer than the air. It was like a hot tub. It was awesome.
I'm going to have a great morning editing into about 5 parts your conversation and sharing it with a large audience. I really believe that what you're doing is tremendous, and I'm so thankful to have had you on this morning, because I had no idea of the extent and depth, the scope of what you're doing and involved in, and that a governing body like the IIHF is playing such an influential role. So kudos to all
thanks,
of you.
Wally. Thanks. So, like I say, I like, hopefully we can expand on it if people are interested later online. But yeah, for sure, if you have time, next week, if you want to go for a coffee sometime, send me a text, and glad to meet you for a coffee, show you some more pictures, and like I say, tell more of the personal stories. I think this was kind of almost an impersonal overview of the work itself, more a detail oriented thing, just to try to help educate people on what the IIHF is doing. And but yeah, boy, what a trip. I've worked in a lot of places, Wally, and been in a lot of countries, but with all the missiles and everything else that was going on, that peacefulness of the mosque, I mean, man, it made such an impact on all of us. It's terrific.
Well, have a peaceful day, my man.
Thanks. All right, buddy.
Take
Thanks
care.
for the opportunity.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.